Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I know we're sensitive to everybody's time. So apologies that you cannot see me, but thank you for joining us today. I am Karen Dodeja-Smith. I'm a health coach and I handle content for Companion Health. And I'm excited to introduce to you today Nathalie Simmons Jorge. She's the co-founder and CEO of our primary care practice that offers both Western and functional medicine. I have personally known Nathalie for over 10 years, and during this time, she has had life instances that led her on this journey to get to the root cause of one of her own children's issues with success. And today she's a health coach. She's obviously a mother, as I just mentioned. She runs her practice, and she knows firsthand that you are the one who needs to advocate for yourself when it comes to healthcare. And so today she's going to share tips on how to do that. She's also going to debunk myths that relate to being healthy and leave you with actionable items to get started today. Just a few housekeeping issues quickly. I know we're already using the chat function. That is perfect. Chat or the Q&A is great. If you have a question, just drop it in there. We will get to it at the end. The presentation is going to be about 30 minutes, and we have allocated about 15 minutes for questions and answers after that. So go ahead and drop those. We will see them. If I don't respond right away, we will address them. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Nathalie.
Thank you, Kieran. And I am so sorry. I am being challenged to be able to figure out how to turn on Kieran's video. So you're just seeing her name there. And that is my responsibility there. I need to figure out that for next time. But I am very passionate about this topic of taking control of your own health. So thank you for showing up. It shows me that you're also interested in doing the same for yourself. So let's start with, see if I can get it to go, of why I even got into health and wellness. I grew up in New Orleans, and a lot of the food you see there on the left are actually what I ate as a child. I ate a lot of sugary cereals, drinks, fried foods, the infamous TV dinner there on the lower right hand of the picture area. Vegetables didn't make much of an appearance early on in my life. The few that did were often microwaved and mushy, so I never really developed a taste for them. And so what do you think I fed my kids when they were little? Yeah, a lot of the same foods I ate as a kid, Pop-Tarts and all. And that is until one of them got pretty sick at around the age of 5. And it wasn't the pediatrician, it wasn't the neurologist, it wasn't the gastroenterologist even who figured out what was going on. Our family was really quite fortunate because we had our own in-house physician, who is my husband and current business partner, Dr. Carlos Jorge, who was able to come up with a diagnosis. And armed with that diagnosis, and being the mother hen that I am, I started to read everything that I could get my hands on. And the more I read, the more I learned about the impact our food system and toxins in our environment are having on human health. And so began my personal health and wellness journey. So by making some lifestyle changes over time, not only were we able to help our child heal, but our whole family has become a lot healthier as a result. We have been on this path for almost 15 years now. So one of my real goals for all of you today is to help shorten your learning curve. So maybe it won't take you 15 years to learn what we have. And also emphasize that it's an ongoing journey. I continue to learn new things every day and continue to have to make changes for optimal health. Another thing that I'd like to have you leave with today is that you don't have to put up with feeling bad or feel hopeless because you've been given quote unquote, bad genes. There is a ton you can do to really influence how well you are. There's a saying, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And that really is quite true. So before we start to talk about how you can take control of your own health, I think it's also important to talk about why you need to take control of your own health, right? A lot of us think the healthcare system is there to fix us, that when we go into the doctor's office, we're going to move out of the driver's seat and into the passenger seat and let them fix us, right? But so much of our health, it doesn't just happen in the doctor's office, it actually happens outside the doctor's office. And even in the doctor's office, as we'll go through right now, there are a lot of flaws, right? Visits are getting shorter and shorter. I think the average right now is about 7 to 10 minutes. If you've had any kind of illness that's been years in the making, it's just not enough time to tackle the root cause of what's been going on. As a perspective, we spend at our clinic at Companion Health a minimum of 60 to 90 minutes at an initial visit with our clients. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. Other issues we see are difficulty scheduling timely appointments. I suspect a lot of you have experienced this firsthand. The CDC reports that 6 out of 10 US adults have a chronic illness. So it's not surprised that there's this big traffic jam, not enough doctors to see everyone who is in need of their care. Along with that, one size fits all Band-Aid prescriptions and procedures. For those of you who have children, perhaps, not all children learn the same way. They don't do well on standardized testing. They may squeak by for a period of time and then eventually something gives. Well, the same is true of our bodies. We are unique and we require unique care. I often give my husband a lot of grief for his med speak. There can be a lot of confusing terminology in the healthcare system. Likewise, a lack of transparent pricing. There was a recent New York Times article in August of this year, and it was really, really telling because the pricing varies by geography and who your insurance provider is. Anywhere for like a knee MRI was quoted as being as little as $215 in some instances and over $4,000 in others, which is just crazy to me and probably to you as well for the exact same service. We have burned out physicians because of a lot of the reasons we've talked to above. And really, really important is often there's this disconnect between the mind and the body. So much of our physiological health is connected with our mental health. And when we just treat a symptom from a body standpoint, we're not addressing the whole person. And last but not least, there's a lot of narrow thinking out there that there's just one way to treat a disease or something's completely untreatable. I'm here to hopefully suggest and encourage you to think otherwise. So how do you start to take control? Well, the first thing is having a mindset shift from this reactive healthcare system that we're in to more proactive well care. On the previous slide, we talked about how there's a lot of reactivity. Have high blood pressure? Here's a medicine to lower your blood pressure. Not sleeping? Here's another pill. If you have back pain, maybe you need an injection or surgery. But it doesn't have to be this way. The type of medicine we practice at our clinic is more functional medicine or integrative medicine. And it does combine Western medicine with a more holistic approach. It tries to get at the root cause of disease. So for instance, if going back to the example of high blood pressure, yes, someone may need to be on a medicine for that blood pressure, but we also want to understand, well, why is your blood pressure high in the first place? And what can we do as a team to chip away and help you potentially wean off those blood pressure medications ultimately? And if it sounds too good to be true, there is a catch. Our clients pay for our preventive services. I think we're also used to thinking our insurance should pay for all our healthcare needs, that many of us are investing more in our homes, our cars, our phones than we do in our own bodies. And I often use the auto insurance analogy with our clients to explain what I mean. We use our auto insurance if we get in an accident or a tree falls on our car, but to do things like put gas in the tank, change the engine oil, wash it, we do all those things and we use our own money to do those things because we want the car to run better for longer. Well, what better investment is there in your own than in your own health? We only get one body. It's not like we get to trade it in or, sell it. So I think it's starting with a shift in your mindset about what healthcare insurance is able to do and what it's not able to do is a really good place to start. And some of you may be saying, oh, well, I can't afford it. I'm already falling apart. I'm too old. I am here to tell you otherwise and to encourage you to take a proactive approach. There are things you can do, and we'll cover some of those over the course of this webinar. We regularly work with clients in their 50s, 60s, and older who are able to reverse chronic illness. It is never too late to start, and just starting is part of the process. So one of the things that you can do right away is start educating yourself, and let's deal with the elephant in the room. We often joke, Dr. Google. It's important to do research. It's also important to know who to trust and what are reliable resources. So some resources are more reliable than others. As far as looking at health information, I defer to a lot of the major medical centers like Cleveland Clinic or Mayo or Johns Hopkins or the major universities, Stanford, Harvard, et cetera. In the functional medicine or integrative medicine space, accrediting organizations like IFM and A4M are great resources. Moving on to social media, caution, right? Nancy on Facebook touting what worked for her, your best friend, it could be great for her. It could be dangerous for you. So having that little bit of critical eye when you're looking at social media is really important. Then let's talk about research studies. They're not all created equal. You know, the news media love reporting sensational items like study shows that candy doesn't contribute to childhood obesity. So if it sounds too good to be true, it may be too good to be true. Considering that perhaps the candy industry subsidized that study. A far more reliable resource would be looking at something that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, is funding. There are also a lot of famous people out there who are making a lot of impressive claims. Again, approach them with a skeptical eye. There's often a catch, and not every program is going to work for every person. We're all unique, and something that may be nourishing for one person could be actually toxic for you. So keep that in mind, please. And the last thing that I like to emphasize here is that getting a diagnosis is not the end of a journey, right? I think so many of us are trying to figure out why. It's actually the beginning of your journey. And I encourage you to ask yourself, what led me down this path? Maybe ask a few different providers for their opinions, because again, a lot of chronic illness is reversible. And I know it's a cliche that knowledge is power, but in this instance, it's really, really important that you do your research. Okay, and part of that research is going to extend to a healthcare team. And I say team because it's not just your medical provider, right? You've got to ask yourself, who do I need to support me on my team? And everyone is going to need a different group of folks. Health just doesn't happen in the doctor's office, as we've already discussed. So maybe consider expanding your team to include health coaches, athletic trainers, acupuncturists, cognitive behavioral therapist, really whoever you think will best support you. So why, for instance, could it be helpful to work with a health coach like myself? Well, although not true of all physicians, including my husband, who's gotten a lot more education in this regard, they're not receiving nutrition education in medical school. It's just not something that's included. But as a health coach, I've personally spent thousands of hours learning about nutrition and wellness. And that's not all that I work with our clients on. There are a lot of things that nourish us, I'd like to say, off the plate, right? Things like relationships and spirituality and career. And those are just a few of the areas that we also address. So just like you can research your health conditions, you can also research your providers. I encourage you to consult Google reviews. Talk to your friends and families and get recommendations. And then as far as qualities to look for in those providers, people who listen to you, who are compassionate. I think it's also really nice to work with folks who walk the talk, right? They're not just telling you to do something, they're actually living it themselves. Okay, so now this is a biggie as well. We've got to set realistic expectations of both your providers and yourself. It is a joint effort, and you've got to do your part in showing up for your appointments, being prepared with good questions. Maybe you need to bring in a pen and paper and take notes if you're in with a doctor. You're typically, if you only have 7 to 10 minutes with them. I often think that a lot of folks come in overwhelmed because they're not feeling well. Maybe it means bringing in a trusted companion so they can help you absorb a lot of the information that you might be missing. Keeping good records, including taking pictures of your supplements and your medicines. The more information you have at your disposal, the more you're going to be able to optimize your health and be helped. And definitely just get started. You don't want to set like try to do everything all at once. Start small and with the ultimate goal of shooting really high, right? There are no silver bullets or superheroes, and it's going to take some time, especially if disease has been years in the making. Okay, so now let's start talking some tactics that are we've talked about sort of how to set up your healthcare team and why you should and how to go about doing it. Let's now talk about the fact that there are things you can do in your immediate world to really move your health in the right direction. Just because you're getting older, it doesn't mean that you're going to have joint pain, slower metabolism, poor sleep, and cognitive decline. We have heard this over and over and over again, right? It's sort of hammered into us because we're getting older, all these things are going to happen. Well, I am here to suggest that that's not necessarily true. And there are many actions you can start taking today to lower inflammation and improve your health span. And by health span, I mean not just the number of years you're living, but the quality of those years you're living. So these are 6 areas we're gonna talk about today. So nutrition, your fuel. Simon Hill, who prepared this quote in his book, The Proof is in the Plants, is an Australian nutritionist and physiotherapist. And I think this quote is mind-blowing. Wow, an unhealthy diet is now responsible for more years of poor health and deaths than any other lifestyle behavior. It has surpassed deaths caused by tobacco, hunger, infections, communicable diseases. Nutrition matters a lot. So we could spend hours and hours talking about food and nutrition, which is an extremely powerful tool in your arsenal to improve your health. But for the sake of today's webinar, we're just going to focus on this misunderstood player called the calorie. And I'm here to suggest that the calorie is not the key to weight loss. Certainly calories matter to a certain degree, but maybe not as much as height. What we now know that is being overweight or obese is more a symptom of a nutritionally poor diet versus a lack of willpower or a character flaw. When we don't get enough fiber, nutrients, and vitamins, our super smart bodies take protective measures like storing excess sugar as fat. So in many ways, you can think of obesity as starving in a larger body. And I actually am not the greatest photographer. I took these pictures. That's actually a platter, not just a plate. But I think it brings home a really important point. Which of these platters do you think actually may have more calories? And you're probably getting this. It's a trick question. They actually both have the same number of calories, about 470. On the right, it's a cup of strawberries, 2 cups of broccoli, 7 ounces of salmon, and a half cup of sweet potatoes. On the left, there's 6 Oreos and a glass of milk. Well, clearly not all calories are created equal, as this example shows. And if I asked you, which do you think has more vitamins and minerals, I think most of you are going to agree it's the platter on the right. And if I asked you which is going to keep you full longer, I would hope most of you would also say the platter on the right. So it's really about the nutrient density of your food. And that's what matters. There are a lot of fad diets out there, and some of them work for some people and others for others. But really, at the end of the day, the less packaged food you eat, the less processed food you eat, the more whole food you eat, you're going to be better off. And certainly crowding out your plate with a lot of vegetables is where there's fiber and those vitamins and nutrients. It's where it's at. So I encourage you to think about calories a little differently now. And then let's also talk about exercise, because I think we have this generally sort of accepted notion that you exercise to burn calories. But I'd actually encourage you to look at exercise as a way to slow down the aging process. Let's think of those muscles as an organ system in and of themselves. You need to move them to not lose them. And without enough exercise, we lose lean muscle mass, which negatively impacts our body's ability to metabolize fat. Plus, exercise helps your brain. It is brain food. It increases something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, very fancy sounding, BDNF. And that helps create an anti-Alzheimer's effect. Exercise, especially outside in nature, is going to help lower stress hormones like cortisol. So exercise isn't just about burning calories. It's about increasing insulin sensitivity, which is, when we hear about diabetes, we hear about insulin resistance. We want the opposite. We want insulin sensitivity. It helps improve oxygen to your brain, and it helps build lean muscle mass. So exercise, exercise, exercise. Okay, stress. Who doesn't feel stress? It is out there, right? And some stress is really normal. Like if you avoid an accident, or it helps you avoid an accident, or it helps you meet a tight work deadline. And that's that fight or flight response you've probably heard about. Your body begins pumping adrenaline, which causes your heart to start beating faster. It increases blood flow to your muscles, your blood pressure increases, and so forth. And back in the caveman days, when there were the infamous saber-toothed tigers and we needed to get away from that threat, this was a life-saving response, right? And afterwards, then our bodies would calm down and enter what's known as a rest and digest phase. Hear that, the digest phase, like we need that phase. But with all the chronic stress out there, whether it's a traffic delay or work pressure or a family issue or relationship problems, it's like we're constantly staying in this heightened state, and we're not able to get back into that rest and digest phase that is so critical for our overall health. It's not a joke. Chronic stress is definitely not a joke. And it can lead to things like chronic fatigue, digestive problems, and a lot of other inflammatory and autoimmune conditions. So what can you do to help with managing that stress? Well, there are a lot of things listed on this slide, and in the essence of time, we can't go through each and every one of them. I encourage you to take time to look at them and figure out what works for you. And there are many more out there as well, but let's focus on the 4-1-6 breathing for right now. And why do I like focusing on breathing? Well, you can feel the effects right away. You don't have to calm your mind first. You don't have to download an app. You don't even have to close your eyes, although it is nice if you do. And I'm going to talk through 4-1-6 breathing, and you can even, I can't see you, we can't see you, so you can even experiment as I'm talking through it. But to do 4-1-6 breathing, you're going to put your hands on your belly, and you're going to inhale to the count of 4. And as you inhale, your belly should go out so that your diaphragm can drop down and really get lung expansion. At the top of the inhale, you're going to hold your breath for a count of 1. And then on the exhale, you're going to count to 6 and bring your belly back towards center. I think so many of us are always sucking in our bellies that we're not really getting our full breathing. We're not breathing properly. But what's really special about this 4-1-6 breathing is it's that longer exhale that helps shift your body physiologically, remember we talked not mentally, physiologically into the rest and digest mode. So you may want to do that over a cycle of, three cycles. So you may not be able to control if you get stuck in a traffic jam, but you can control how you react to that traffic jam. Maybe you want to do some breathing. And I think that's a big piece of stress management, is determine what you can control versus what you cannot control. Or it's a constant journey. Okay, this one is crazy too. I don't often think we think of our connection as a real reservoir of ultimate health, but Dan Buettner, who, if you're not familiar with him, he is a National Geographic Fellow and author, and he studied the health habits of people who live in the so-called blue zones, regions of the world where people live longer. And the common theme are relationships, really positive relationships, and not so much about the quantity of relationships, but the quality of those relationships, spending time with people who share your values, your interests, and your passions. And if you think about it, friends can be especially important if you're trying to make positive health changes, right? You're far more likely to eat a salad at lunch if your friend who's joining you is eating one, or go for a walk if your friend goes with you. And so I encourage you to schedule time for human to human connection. So many of us are on our phones, on social media, checking email, and certainly in the age of COVID, digital technology can help us connect more with other people. I just encourage it to be human to human versus spending hours on the devices. Okay, another area, and this is a biggie, and we definitely don't have time to dive too deeply into this, but it's important to know there are a lot of toxins in the environment. And remember when I mentioned that genetics may load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger? Here's an area where it's definitely very true, because you've probably heard about the microbiome. We're actually more bacterial DNA than we are human DNA. And those bacterial DNA are responsible for a lot of biological processes, including keeping our guts ultra healthy. We don't want to kill them off unnecessarily by exposing them to things that are killing off other things, right? So the easiest place to start is your food, and thinking about pesticides and herbicides, especially glyphosate, which is used as a drying agent on all kinds of grains. So it's in our environment, and these pesticides obviously are killing the bugs on the crops, but they're killing the bugs in our tummies too. So I encourage you to buy organic when you can, or from a local farmer who grows their produce sustainably. Usually the point of resistance is, well, organic is more expensive. It is. And remember, we were talking about investing in your health. Well, this is an area where it's important to, when you can, to invest in buying foods that are cleaner for your tummies. You can also use a resource like Environmental Working Group, ewg.org. What they do every year is they produce a Dirty Dozen list and a Clean 15 list, so that you can make trade-offs between when to buy organic and when to buy conventional. So for instance, strawberries are notorious for having a lot of pesticide residue. So, and avocados, on the other hand, are typically just fine, and you can buy them conventionally. So a trade-off could be, instead of buying the conventionally grown fresh strawberries, maybe go to Costco and buy a bag of frozen organic strawberries. So there are things you can do to actually manage finances and also do what's in your best interest from a health standpoint. We also take in from our skin and from the air toxins. So EWG also has a great skin deep database where you can plug in makeup, deodorant, sunscreen, and see what your exposure might be. And I encourage you to do so. And in the air, obviously, things like secondhand smoke, to the extent that we can avoid those, that's really, really important. Okay, a lot of emphasis has been put on sleep, almost, I think, probably within the last several years. And I think of sleep as I do my daily shower. I need it nightly to clean up and refresh everything that's inside, from my brain to my blood, muscle tissue, you name it. We constantly hear so many people touting how little sleep they need to get by. I don't recommend you listen to them. Circadian rhythms play a critical role in our overall hormone health, right? And hormones are chemical messengers that regulate every single process in our bodies. Most of us automatically think of sex hormones when we hear the word hormone. And certainly that's a category, but we also have sleep hormones and hunger hormones and stress hormones and so on. And sleep is going to help with the proper regulation of your hormones. So I encourage you to make it a priority. And here are some tips for getting a better night's sleep. I like to highlight the no caffeine afternoon. And caffeine can stay on average in someone's body for 10 hours. And depending on how you metabolize it, it may be longer, it may be a little shorter. But so for folks who say, well, I can drink a cup of coffee at 10 and go to sleep at 11, that may be true. But it begs the question of, are they able to stay asleep? Because that caffeine is going to be in their body for a while. Other things that are really powerful for positively impacting your sleep is setting your bedroom up for success, making sure it's cool, dark, electronics free. I know everybody likes using their phone, or most people like using their phone as an alarm. I actually put mine on the other side I close the door to our bedroom and put it on the other side in our bathroom. So I can still hear it to wake up, but I'm not checking it in the middle of the night, and it's not creating any residual light. I use a white noise maker as well, not on my phone, but an actual physical one we plug in. And also routine and a consistent bedtime routine can be really, really helpful on getting a good night's sleep. Most adults actually need 7 to 9 hours. I put 7 to 8 hours there. It's probably 7 to 9. I tend to shoot for 8. I find I do really well with that. Everybody's a little different, and getting a good night's sleep is going to help you stay well and heal. So in closing, I've included a quote here from James Clear, who's the author of a book called Atomic Habits, which is a lot about habit change. I think it does a good job summarizing much of what we've discussed so far. Spend more time searching for better information sources. A body filled with junk food struggles to move well. A mind filled with junk thoughts struggles to think well. I hope all of you leave here today with one small step you can take over the next couple of weeks to help take control of your own health. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kieran, and we can maybe answer a few questions if there are any.
Sure. You know, I am not seeing, if you have a question, I'm not seeing any in here right now. So if you have a question, if you can please drop it again in either the Q&A or in the chat area. I will hopefully see that right away. I do see a question here. Let me see. Somebody, Elizabeth has asked, what is your best tip for breaking bad habits?
Oh my goodness. My best tip. That's a loaded question, I think. I think everybody's a little bit different. I think awareness of what your habits are is probably where to start. I think so much of our day, we tend to get into routines and be on autopilot. There's a statistic out there. It's somewhere in the 40 to 50% of our day is just habit, routine. So I guess building awareness is where I'd start. That'd be my top tip.
I think that's a good starting point for sure.
Thanks.
We have another tough one. Yes, let's see. There are two. I'm guessing, and if I'm not correct, go ahead and drop it in the chat here if I'm saying this incorrectly. There is the question, where do you suggest people start with their health, which is somewhat similar, but not entirely. And then along with that, are there any books or resources you recommend? I'm not sure if those two questions were supposed to go together or not. So I guess you can answer. Katie, are you able to answer, were those questions supposed to go together, or are they separate? Unless you want to just take that one, Natalie. Either way, she said either way, she will take answers.
Okay, where to start with your health? Where to start? I mean, it's getting back to the habit question, right? It's building awareness. I think we talked about it in the beginning of what's gotten you down this path, and understanding sort of how you may be in certain situations in habits that aren't necessarily supporting you in the direction that you want to go ultimately. So starting with your health is also thinking about where do I ultimately want to go? What's my motivation for improving my health? I think without feeling motivated to do something, that you're going to constantly be butting up against resistance. So knowing what you're motivated to do, and then what's triggering certain behaviors is also really helpful. As far as resources, I mean, I certainly, if we're talking habit change, I think that the author whose quote I shared, James Clear, he's written a book called Atomic Habits. That's very helpful. There's also a gentleman by the name of BJ Fogg I think he's out at Stanford, who's written a book called Tiny Habits. And essentially the same premise. It's about starting small and starting to take steps in the right direction. It's like if you've never run before, thinking that all of a sudden you're going to run a marathon, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure. It's more important to just take 2 minutes a day maybe and get outside and walk and start creating that healthy habit than setting yourself up for something that if you don't meet success right away, you just stop doing entirely. So starting small is another. If there's a question specifically about books in a different area than habit change, I'm happy to comment on more pointed question on that front.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, one thing I think to add, I think the motivation part is key and something that I really like that we do is really looking at at your past,
Mhm.
dating back to your childhood, because I think it's important for people to realize we didn't get to the place that we are today where we're wanting to change from yesterday. And I think taking an honest look at, how things have been over your life can also make you see some of those habits and the way that you are, and really, I guess that really sums it up, how you are the way that you are. And then I think your point of having the motivation and awareness is key, but also taking that into consideration.
And to add of then getting started with your health, I mean, it is also consulting a provider potentially who really listens to you, and being your own internal GPS system. If you feel something is not right, listen to that instinct. I think it's, again, we've spent a lot of time sort of turning ourselves over to the healthcare system. Well, we really have to take that control back and listen to intuitively. If something's not right, then pursue, advocate for yourself.
Mhm. Okay, another question here. From a change and goal setting perspective, do you suggest having a plan for the next year as well as for the next week and month?
Do I suggest having a plan for the next year? Honestly, sometimes I just have to plan for minute by minute in the day. I think having a direction that you're going is really important. The compass, certainly habit formation. I think James Clear actually has said, regarding good and bad habits. Let's just start there. A good habit often feels painful and has a cost in the near term, but over time, maybe 6 months out, you start to see the result. A bad habit often feels really good in the present, but has a cost that may be 6 months out. So yes, looking ahead is important to where you want to go, but on a day-to-day basis, it's setting yourself up for success. So let's talk about maybe a little bit about habit formation. And this may be a little bit of a tangent, but in terms of being able to get there, it's also about taking those tiny steps. And with habits, you can remove friction to help support the quote unquote good habits. And you can introduce friction to help mitigate the likelihood of continuing a bad habit. Everything from putting your clothes out if you want to exercise the night before, if you're exercising in the morning, or having a friend join you so there's some accountability, versus if ice cream is your weakness, as it has been mine, not having it in the house maybe, or putting it in the deep dark cellar. So thinking about, yes, I think having a plan is important, but maybe just starting today with a baby step is where I go. And did I miss another question, Karen, in there?
Yes, you didn't miss it. Just it's a newer one here. This is a really good one. I think a lot of us can relate with this to some extent. I tend to get on a good eating / exercise routine and then get hit with not feeling well, stomach issue, a cold, etc., and then get discouraged, having to take a break until I feel better. I can't seem to get into a consistent routine. I'm
Mhm.
worried about pushing too hard and making myself worse, I guess. Any
Mhm.
suggestions on what I should do during those times?
During the times when you sort of fall off the wagon?
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first, be gentle on yourself. It's not a linear journey. We all have setbacks. Again, it's getting back to awareness and understanding what may have set you back. Was it something emotional? Was it stress? Was it poor sleep? Like maybe start to keep track of the instances when that's happening. And a lot of habit formation is really about architecture as well. So setting up your environment such that you're supported in times when things are compromised. It is, again, it's not a character flaw or a lack of willpower. There's so much of what we do is automated on a day-to-day basis. So I guess I would start there and just reflecting and maybe journaling on what's going on and see if over time you can help set up yourself for success when those kind of things happen.
Okay. All right. And just one last question right now. Do you work with clients just in Charlotte or nationwide?
We do have clients that are nationwide currently. We always like seeing you in person if we can. It's back to that human connection. Human to human contact is invaluable, but we do have clients. We do have clients throughout the country.
Okay.
And that's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I know this is a short webinar and there's so much we could have dived into. Is that dived? I don't even know how to say if my grammar is right, but I'd certainly appreciate and welcome the opportunity to do a future webinar. If you have ideas, certainly drop those into the chat box as well, because there's a lot we can do to take control of our own health. And Karen, thank you for moderating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Natalie. I personally found it very informative and lots of great tips. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, is there another chat or are we? Nice.
No, some just fantastic. And thank you. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.